Hi and welcome to Storytime. It's just about 11:30 on Tuesday, and this is our special time. A special time because it means so much to me to count on this connection, this time of truly just showing up. Now, I always have a little bit of a yoga lesson that I like to share, but really, yoga is just the lens in which I see and define and make sense of my world. But it's through the daily toil, the work of living, of showing up, that we can choose what matters most. And one of the things that matters most to me is honestly just showing up. It took me a long time to embrace the practice that it's enough just to show up. Because some days it feels like you're supposed to have it all together, that you're supposed to do all the things perfectly and feel full of love. Well, this is February after all, and are we all supposed to be feeling the love? But it's also Black History Month. Why is it that the shortest month of the year we give to these two particular topics? Now, obviously, there's also President's Day in there somewhere and some other things that we can celebrate, but the big messages about February are all wrapped up in love. And in recent days, equality and justice, particularly in the area of our darker-skinned friends and family and loved ones and neighbors, our Black, our Asian, our Native American populations, whatever skin color, right? The variety of that skin tone color shouldn't be a question of whether or not to practice love. And so I dedicate February to making this month not just 28 days of phoning it in, but a real dedication, a real commitment to practicing ahimsa. Ahimsa compels us to love freely and abundantly. It compels us to act in a way that fosters hope and justice, that we can live openly and freely, being our own true best self. No matter what our culture or society has deemed as normal or best, let us expand that, because so many of us have learned that love is best kept a secret. I don't think that is how we can best love. In fact, I've come to use this analogy a little bit in the sense that a wedding signifies the public proclamation, the beginning of the relationship of a marriage. It's not to say that that's when love began in that union, but it's where love becomes so powerful and so big that it must be witnessed publicly. This same analogy works for understanding our rights, our civil rights, and our fight for justice, racial justice, sexual justice, orientation justice. Whatever justice is not being met in terms of establishing equal access to the rights of being human. We need to fight for that commencement, that public acknowledgement. Let us fight for the right to love, by way of civil rights, by the way of, yes, marriage rights, by the way of the right to be worthy of love just as we are, by showing up authentically. So ahimsa is the Sanskrit term. It really comes from Patanjali's yamas. In fact, it's the first yama being the foundational ethical principles of yoga. Yoga beyond the practice on the mat, yoga as the principles and the practice of living intimately with prana, or as I define it, living intimately with inspiration. So if ahimsa was and is principle number one, should it not also be principle number one in how we are choosing to live our lives? So in other words, can we put ahimsa into practice by way of civil rights and justice, by way of doing acts of love and celebrations of things like births and marriages and even deaths as the celebration of the life that was lived? But on a more intimate, maybe even a more personal level, can we apply ahimsa as those daily acts of love, those toils, those labors that we do not just because we're good at them, although that's great, but also because we know that they are important. We know that they have value. So the first step in practicing ahimsa might in fact be redefining what love in action, what service and contribution looks like. Rolf Gates he's a yogi and a recovering addict actually, and he talks about the principles of yoga and applies them for daily meditation. And one of his statements that's really stuck with me over the years after studying his daily meditations is this idea that our practice is the inhalation and our dharma, or our contribution, our life's work, is the exhalation. And that's the way I want to practice ahimsa. I want to practice ahimsa with the intention and mindfulness that I practice breathing when I sit for pranayama, so that it is more supple and accessible even when I don't dedicate time to it. It just moves through me and out of me as comfortably and easily as the breath does when I'm in a safe, abiding, calm space. In other words, can love be as supple of a language as the breath has become as a result of my practice? The breath wasn't always this supple in my being. In fact, for years I suffered from anxiety and even diagnosed with different ailments that were regarding the constriction of the muscles that moved my breath. As I learned to cultivate the breath, miraculously, maybe not, those diagnoses fell away. I was no longer suffering from the same breath problems that I'd had before practicing yoga. And so it's those muscles that I want to awaken and discover in terms of living love, practicing ahimsa in action. Now, we can practice ahimsa. Again, this is the Sanskrit word that really refers to the non-harming. And just like justice begins by protecting people's human rights, it goes farther than that in the terms of not only protecting from harm, but also doing good, doing acts of love, acts of kindness, because we can. Now, yoga gives us 3 tools: our body, our breath, and our mind. Within the mind, we also have 3 dimensions: the intellect, the emotional, and the intuitive belly. When we can bring this team of resources, of tools together into the toolbox that is this moment, that is our awareness, our witness, we can choose which tool to apply wisely. This is tapas, so that we can do our service, do our dharma on the exhale. In other words, take a breath in. What if it was enough? What if love could come out of your lungs with the exhale? Notice sound and speech, singing, moaning, groaning, they require the exhale to float over the vocal cords, creating that vibration we call sound. And for some, they can produce actual melodious sound, right, through singing. I'm not going to sing for you because that's not my gifting. But I do want to encourage you to think about that, as effortless as it may be. Now, not everyone, obviously, has effortless sound, but words are a powerful way to express love. Just as our thoughts, a metta meditation or a loving kindness meditation, done even just in our own headspace. But we also have the body, and through our actions, we can do acts of love. We can do acts of love of different levels of effort based on the resources that we have available. Again, maybe it's just a metta, a prayer that we give. Maybe it's words of encouragement, compassion, kindness, or appreciation. In fact, I encouraged my husband yesterday to send a note to a friend of ours, because in thinking about this friend, he said, "Man, I really miss seeing so-and-so." And I said, "Well, why don't you send him a message? Let him know that you miss seeing him." And he's like, "Well, he already knows that." I said, "I don't care if he already knows that. Who doesn't want to be heard? Who doesn't want to hear that affirmation that I miss you?" That is an act of love. So my challenge for you today is to consider, what is the act of love that is in your abundance, that you can apply your energy? Maybe it's through your words. Maybe it's through your pen. Maybe it's through your mind's thoughts. And you send love, whether it's to an individual, to a community, or to an institution or a mission that needs some extra love, some extra affirmation and encouragement. And can we practice those kindnesses, those acts of love intentionally with our attention, so that every action can create and help to recreate this world into the world that we all deserve and want to live in? I hope that you know that you are loved. I appreciate, I love you. And share that love is probably the most important work that any of us can do. Share it with ourselves through loving touch and kindnesses, such as choosing wise habits to nurture and support ourselves, but also sharing it with each other. So go forth and share this love, tackling this image that love is only about romance and sex, and tackling this idea that there is a one image of what makes a good human in the world. Let's combat these myths with love. Be well. May you breathe deeply, move freely, labor lovingly, and live vibrantly. Namaste. Thanks for being here. I look forward to hearing your comments, your thoughts, your questions, and the ways in which that you are helping to share and spread love. Be well.